The year was 1976. The world believed the Apollo missions had ended with Apollo 17. People thought the moon was finished, explored, and no longer useful, but behind closed doors, far from the eyes of the public, one last mission was prepared in silence. It was called Apollo 20. The crew of Apollo 20 was chosen with great care. 2 American astronauts and 1 Soviet cosmonaut, men who were loyal, disciplined, and trusted to keep secrets. They were told this mission never existed. They were told that if they returned, no one would ever know their names, and if they failed, no one would ever remember them. The rocket launched from a hidden site. There was no live broadcast, no cheering crowds, only silence. Only a handful of people on Earth even knew it happened. The ship rose through the sky and vanished into the blackness of space, leaving behind a world that believed nothing unusual was happening as the days passed. The crew carried out their journey across the silent void, but unlike earlier Apollo missions, their target was not the visible side of the moon. They were heading to the far side, a place hidden from Earth. A place that satellites had shown was not empty. Strange shapes had been recorded. Shadows that did not belong to any rock or crater inside the spacecraft. Tension grew. One astronaut, Commander Lewis, stared at the screens showing lunar terrain. He whispered that something was moving, but the others dismissed it as static. Interference. The cosmonaut, Ivan, said nothing, but his eyes stayed fixed on the monitor. The silence of space pressed heavily on them. There was no radio contact with Earth once they passed behind the moon. Mission Control could not see them. They were completely alone. And that isolation made every sound inside the ship echo louder. Every breath, every click of a switch, every nervous cough. On the 3rd day near lunar orbit, the crew received a transmission. At first, it was only static, like a broken signal. But then, beneath the static, a faint voice seemed to whisper. The words were not English, not Russian. They were strange, stretched, and cold. The astronauts froze. The voice faded as quickly as it came, leaving only silence. Commander Lewis recorded the sound. He looked at his crew and said they were not to speak of it. The mission was dangerous enough. But the whisper hung in their minds like a shadow. Finally, their ship descended toward a wide, dark crater on the far side of the moon. The engines roared. Dust rose. And the landing legs touched the surface. Everything was gray, endless, and dead. But in the distance, something broke the pattern. A shape that was too smooth, too long, too deliberate, too be natural. The astronauts climbed down the ladder, their boots pressing into soft dust that had not been disturbed for millions of years. They walked together, their suits heavy, their hearts heavier. Each step carried them closer to the impossible sight. There, half buried in lunar dust, lay a massive object shaped like a ship, but not built by human hands. Its surface was cracked, but curved in ways no human engineer would design. It looked ancient, older than the craters around it. Yet it gave off a feeling of waiting, as if it was not dead, but asleep. Ivan muttered in Russian that it looked alive. One of the Americans told him to stay quiet, but deep down, they all felt the same. The object was not just a wreck, it was something else, something beyond their understanding. As they approached, their suit radios filled with faint static again. The whisper returned, this time louder, this time filled with strange rhythm. It almost sounded like breathing. The astronauts froze. Their eyes locked on one another, fear rising in their chests. Commander Lewis forced himself to continue. He placed his hand on the strange surface, and for a brief second, the ship seemed to pulse under his glove. A faint vibration ran through his arm, like the heartbeat of something not human. The crew stumbled back, their breathing heavy inside their helmets. No one spoke, but each of them knew one thing. Apollo 20 had not just discovered an alien artifact. They had awakened something. Back inside their landing module, they argued in hushed voices. Should they report this to Earth? Should they explore further, Or should they leave immediately? One said they would be heroes if they brought proof. Another said they would never return alive if they disturbed it. As they fought with words, the whisper returned one last time. But this time it was clear. The sound formed into something almost like words, words that seemed to echo inside there. "Skulls, rather than through their radios, do not wake me," the voice said, soft, broken, and terrifying. The crew sat in stunned silence. None of them moved. None of them breathed for a long moment, and in that silence, one truth settled in their hearts. Apollo 20's mission was not a discovery. It was a warning. And by landing here, they had already gone too far. The crew of Apollo 20 could not sleep, even inside the small lunar module. The whisper still echoed in their ears. Commander Lewis sat in silence, staring at the strange readings on the control panel. Ivan muttered prayers in Russian, and Dr. Keller, the second astronaut, kept checking the oxygen levels again and again. Not because he feared running out, but because it gave his hands something to do. Something to control. Outside the window, the alien structure loomed in the distance. Half buried in dust and shadow, it was enormous, larger than any building on Earth. Its shape curved like a crescent, yet jagged like broken glass. Parts of its surface reflected light faintly. Other parts seemed to swallow it, almost as if the material itself was alive. At last, Commander Lewis decided they could not turn back now. Earth had sent them here for a reason. The satellites had shown this object, and their mission was to uncover what it was. If they returned with nothing, the secret would remain forever in silence, and their sacrifice would be meaningless. They prepared to leave the safety of the module. The three men checked their suits, adjusted their helmets, and stepped once more into the dust. Their footsteps were slow, heavy, and cautious. Each step carried them closer to something no human eyes had ever seen before. The silence of the moon was crushing. No wind, no sound. Only their breaths inside their helmets. But as they reached the base of the alien ship, the silence was broken by a faint hum. It was not coming from their equipment. It was not feedback. It was coming from the ship itself, like the sound of a machine that should have been dead but was still alive. They found an opening, a dark slit in the surface, as if something had once been a doorway but had sealed over time. With effort, they cleared the dust, revealing a hollow tunnel. Commander Lewis hesitated a bit, then gave the order they would enter. Inside, their flashlights cut through the darkness. The walls were smooth, metallic, and marked with strange lines that glowed faintly when touched. The air was thin, but breathable, which shocked them. It meant there was still life support inside, or something close to it, as they moved deeper. Their boots clanged against the metal floor, and their voices sounded small, weak, like whispers swallowed by an endless cave. Dr. Keller stopped suddenly, pointing his light to the side. There, frozen in a wall of crystal-like material, was something that made their blood run cold. It was a body, not human, not anything from Earth. It was tall, almost twice their size, with skin the color of ash, its features sharp, elegant, and alien. Its eyes closed as if in sleep, its arms folded across its chest, and around its head was a crown-like structure that glowed faintly under the light. The astronauts stood frozen. None of them dared to move. The figure looked ancient, but it also looked untouched by time, as though it had been placed there intentionally, preserved perfectly. Ivan whispered through the comms, saying it was not dead, not truly. It looked like someone resting, waiting. Commander Lewis ordered him to stop talking nonsense, but his own voice trembled as he said it. They moved past the figure deeper inside the corridors, and everywhere they turned, they saw more signs of strange design. Walls that pulsed faintly, as if carrying energy. Symbols etched into doors that changed their glow when approached, and faint vibrations beneath their feet like the heartbeat of the entire ship. At one point, Dr. Keller brushed his gloved hand against a control panel. And instantly, the corridor lit up, lines of light spreading across the walls. A low hum filled the air. The ship was waking, the three men froze, fear gripping them. But it was too late. The systems of the alien vessel were no longer dormant. Lights flickered on overhead. A thin flow of air brushed against their suits, and far behind them, the crystal wall holding the alien body began to crack. Commander Lewis shouted for them to retreat. But the sound of the cracking was louder than his voice. Shards fell away, and slowly, the alien woman inside began to shift. Her fingers twitched. Her chest rose, her eyes opened, glowing faintly with a light that did not belong to any living creature on Earth. The astronauts stumbled back, their breathing fast, their hearts pounding. Ivan dropped to his knees, whispering that they had awakened. A goddess. Commander Lewis grabbed his arm, pulling him up, saying they had to leave now. But none of them moved. None of them could. The alien woman looked at them, her gaze sharp and strange. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Instead, the walls of the ship vibrated, and the whispers returned, filling their helmets, echoing inside their skulls. Images flashed in their minds, visions of stars, wars, and burning worlds. They saw fleets of ships, entire civilizations falling into fire. They saw her kind, powerful, and proud. And then they saw the darkness that consumed them. A force that could not be stopped, Dr. Keller screamed, clutching his helmet as if trying to block the visions. Ivan stood in awe, tears streaming down his face. Commander Lewis forced himself to stay calm. Though his body shook, he demanded to know what she wanted. But the only answer was silence, followed by one word that rang in their heads like a bell. Run. The lights in the ship flared. Alarms sounded. The floor shook. Dust rained down from above. The alien woman's gaze never left them. And they realized, with a chill in their bones, they had not discovered a tomb. They had opened a prison, Apollo 20's crew had uncovered a truth that was never meant to be known. And already, the moon felt less like rock and more like a trap that had finally been sprung the moment the alien woman opened her eyes. The crew of Apollo 20 felt something change in the air. The moon had always been silent, empty, and lifeless. But now, inside the alien ship, it felt alive. The walls glowed faintly. The hum grew louder. And the ground itself trembled under their boots. Commander Lewis tried to remain calm. He raised his hand, signaling the others to stay still. But inside his chest, his heart was racing. Dr. Keller could not stop shaking, his flashlight trembling. As the beam of light shook across the walls, Ivan whispered prayers again, calling the alien woman an angel, a guardian, a goddess. The alien woman sat upright, crystal shards falling from her body, her movements slow, graceful, almost too human. Her eyes glowed with faint golden light, and when she looked at them, it felt as if she could see through the helmets, through their minds, as if nothing could be hidden from her gaze. She opened her mouth to speak, but instead of words, the walls of the ship vibrated. The sound filled the air like music and thunder at the same time. The astronauts clutched their helmets, the vibrations crawling into their skulls. Then the sound turned into whispers, and the whispers became images. In an instant, the crew saw visions that did not belong to them. Stars collapsing, great ships burning, armies screaming. They saw alien cities destroyed by fire and shadows. They saw her kind, tall, and proud. Their ships powerful, their armies endless, yet all of them falling to something darker. Something that was not flesh, not metal, but a consuming force that spread like night. Dr. Keller cried out, begging for it to stop, but the vision pressed harder, showing Earth, not as it was, but as it could be, burning, broken, swallowed in the same darkness. Ivan fell to his knees again, whispering that this was the future, that she was warning them. Commander Lewis forced his eyes open, forcing himself to watch, when the visions ended. Silence filled the chamber once again. The alien woman stood, her tall form towering over them, her skin pale and shimmering faintly under the glow of the walls. She moved her hand slowly, touching a panel on the wall, and instantly, the entire corridor lit up. Light stretching down as if the ship itself had taken a breath. Commander Lewis tried to speak. His voice shaking, he asked her who she was. What? She wanted. The alien woman turned her gaze toward him. Her lips moved, and for the first time, a sound came from her mouth. Broken, strange, but still close to language. Danger, she whispered, her voice thin. As if it had not been used for thousands of years, the word echoed inside their helmets, and then she said another. One that chilled them more than the first. Hunter. The astronauts exchanged terrified glances. Commander Lewis asked what she meant, but the alien woman lifted her arm again. Pressing her palm against another glowing panel, the walls shifted, and suddenly, the ship showed them space beyond the moon. A hologram filled the room, stars shining brightly. And then, something else appeared. A shadow moved across the stars. Not a ship, not a planet, but something vast, spreading like a black wave. Swallowing light as it passed, the alien woman pointed to it, her glowing eyes locking on the astronauts. And the meaning was clear. The darkness that had destroyed her. People was still out there. It was moving, and now it had sensed her awakening. Dr. Keller's breath came fast. He shook his head, saying they had to leave. They had to warn Earth. Ivan disagreed. He said they could not abandon her. She had survived when no one else had. She might be their only chance to fight the darkness. Commander Lewis felt the weight of command pressing harder than ever, the lives of his crew, and maybe even Earth. Balanced on a decision he did not fully understand. The alien woman stepped closer. She reached out her hand slowly, not in threat, but in plea. The walls whispered again, voices repeating one word over and over. Choose. The crew did not move. Their suits heavy, their hearts heavier. Ivan stepped forward first, bowing his head slightly. His voice trembling as he said they could not turn away, not when she had shown them the truth. Dr. Keller shouted at him, calling him insane, saying she was not human, not safe, that they were. Nothing more than insects to her, the alien woman tilted her head, studying them. Then she placed her hand gently on Ivan's helmet, and for a moment his body stiffened, his eyes wide. But then he calmed, his face relaxed, and tears rolled down his cheeks. He whispered that she was not their enemy. She was afraid. She was. Alone, Commander Lewis pulled Ivan back, fear and anger in his voice. But, deep inside, even he felt it. The alien woman was not here to kill them. She was running, hiding, and now, because of them. Her hiding place was no longer safe. The ground shook again. Alarms inside the ship grew louder. Red lights flashed across the walls. Something was approaching. Something outside the moon. The alien woman looked toward the ceiling as if she could see beyond the rock. Her eyes glowing brighter. She whispered one last word. Coming. The astronauts stared at one another. Their breath fast. Their choices slipping away. Apollo 20 was no longer a secret mission. It had become a doorway, a warning, and now it was too late to turn back. The alarms inside the alien ship did not stop. Red light pulsed across the walls. The ground shook as if something deep within the moon was moving. Commander Lewis shouted for the crew to fall back, but the alien woman raised her hand, her glowing eyes fixed on the walls, as if listening to voices they could not hear. The astronauts froze, caught between fear and wonder. Even whispered that she was speaking to the ship. Her lips barely moved, but the lights answered her. Flowing across the walls like rivers of fire, Dr. Keller begged them to leave, to run back to their module and escape while they still could. But the truth was clear. They had already gone too far. The alien woman stepped forward and touched a great, circular wall. The metal rippled like water, then opened, revealing a chamber beyond. The crew followed her reluctantly, their hearts pounding. Inside was a wide hall filled with strange machines, tall pillars glowing faintly, and across the far wall, a mural carved into the metal itself. The astronauts shined their lights across it, and what they saw turned their blood cold. The mural showed her people, tall, proud, and powerful. They stood at the center of stars, their fleets shining like suns, but then the images darkened, showing something else. A great shadow spreading across the stars, swallowing ships, breaking planets, turning everything into dust. The alien woman placed her hand on the wall, and the mural came alive. Light spilled from the carvings, and once again visions filled the minds of the astronauts. They saw battles fought long before humanity walked the Earth, her people firing weapons that lit entire star systems, but the shadow kept advancing. It was not an army, it was a hunger. Commander Lewis staggered back, gasping for air inside his helmet. The vision showed entire galaxies falling into silence, the voices of millions crying out, then fading. Ivan fell to his knees again, whispering that this was not war, it was extermination. Dr. Keller pressed his hands against his helmet, shouting that they had to stop this, that humanity could never face such a thing. The alien woman turned her gaze to them again. Her voice came as a whisper, thin and broken, but heavy. "With meaning, Hunter," she said. Her word echoing in their skulls, "It follows." Commander Lewis demanded to know if it was coming for Earth. The alien woman closed her eyes, and in their minds they saw it, the blue planet glowing, beautiful and alive. And then they saw darkness stretch across it, cities burning, oceans boiling, forests turning to ash. The image faded, but the fear it left behind did not. The crew stood in silence, each man shaking, each man struggling to breathe. The alien woman looked at them, her face calm, but her eyes full of something ancient, something like sorrow. Dr. Keller spoke first, his voice breaking. He said they had to destroy her, destroy the ship, if this thing was a beacon, if it was calling the darkness. Then Earth could never survive. Commander Lewis shook his head, saying they did not have the means, that she was not their enemy. Ivan stepped closer, placing his hand on the glowing wall, saying they had to trust her, that she had survived when no one else had. But then another truth struck them. If she had been sleeping here for so long, if she had been hidden inside the moon, then maybe she had been placed here for a reason. Maybe she was not only a survivor, maybe she was bait, or worse, a prison. The thought spread through their minds like fire. Was she truly their savior, or was she the danger itself? The alien woman turned away from them, raising her hands to the machines. The walls shuddered. Energy pulsed through the floor. The ship was no longer silent. It was alive. It was waking fully. Commander Lewis pulled Ivan back, his voice harsh, demanding that they leave before it was too late. But the ship sealed the doorway behind them, trapping them inside the chamber. The alien woman looked at them again, and her voice filled their skulls with one word: bound. The astronauts felt their legs weaken, their stomachs twist. As if invisible chains wrapped around them, they stumbled, falling to their knees. Dr. Keller screamed, trying to fight. Commander Lewis gritted his teeth, trying to resist. But the truth was undeniable. The ship had claimed them. Visions returned, this time showing not only destruction, but the fate of those who had awakened. Her before, other species, other explorers, all who had come too close. They saw ships lost, crews screaming, faces vanishing into the dark, and then silence. The alien woman reached out her hand again, as if asking for their trust, but her eyes burned with light, and her sorrowful expression looked almost like a mask. Ivan reached for her, tears falling as he whispered that they must follow. Commander Lewis dragged him back, shouting that this was madness. Dr. Keller begged for them to end it now, to destroy the ship, but no one knew how. No one knew if it was even possible. The hum grew louder. The floor shook harder. The ship itself was preparing for something outside. Dust rose from the lunar surface as if the vessel was waking from its grave. The astronauts clung to the walls, terror gripping them as the realization struck. Apollo 20 had not discovered a relic of the past. It awakened a signal to the future. The truth was terrifying. They had not found life. They had found a curse. And now, Earth was no longer hidden. Earth was no longer safe. The alien ship groaned like a beast, awakening from a deep slumber. Its walls pulsed with light. The floor shook beneath the astronauts' boots, and the air grew heavy with energy that made their skin crawl. Commander Lewis gripped the wall to steady himself, his mind racing with one question: had they just doomed Earth by waking this thing? Ivan, however, stood trembling but wide-eyed, staring at the alien woman as if she were a miracle. He whispered that she was not their enemy, that she was guiding them. Dr. Keller snapped at him, his voice breaking. With panic, he shouted that they could not trust her, that she was leading them to death. The alien woman raised her hand, her golden eyes glowing brighter, and the whispers returned, voices filling the astronauts' heads. The word repeated again and again. Choose. Commander Lewis clenched his fists. He understood now. The ship had awakened because of them, and now it demanded their choice. Bring her back to Earth and risk exposing humanity to the darkness, or try to destroy the ship here and bury the truth forever. But how could they destroy something so massive, something so alive? Their weapons were useless, their tools too small. The thought made Lewis's stomach twist. Dr. Keller pulled out a small, explosive charge, one of the few they carried for research drilling. His hands shook as he held it up. He said they could place it near the energy core of the ship. Maybe it would destabilize the structure. Maybe it would collapse the chamber. But Ivan shouted, no. Saying they could not kill her, she was the only one who understood the darkness. She was their only chance. The three men faced each other, trapped in the alien chamber, fear and anger mixing into something dangerous. Ivan's eyes glowed with faith, Keller's with terror, and Lewis with doubt. The alien woman stepped closer, her tall figure casting a long shadow across the glowing floor. She reached her hand toward Lewis, her face calm, sorrowful, her lips moved, and her broken voice whispered one word: trust. Lewis froze, his breath caught in his throat. In her eyes, he saw not power, not dominance, but loneliness. A loneliness so deep it made his heart ache. Ivan whispered that she had been alone, for longer than their entire civilization, that she had waited, hidden, watching stars die. She was not asking for worship. She was asking for help, but Dr. Keller would not listen. He shoved the explosive into Lewis's hands, his voice rising in desperation. He said if they brought her back, Earth would burn, humanity would end. Keller's voice broke as he shouted that they had to end this here. They had to end her. Lewis stood between them, his mind pulled in both directions. Destroy her and maybe save Earth, or protect her and gamble everything on hope. The alarms grew louder. The ship groaned again, the walls shifting like lungs breathing outside. Lunar dust rose higher as if the vessel was preparing to leave its grave. Lewis shouted for silence, his voice echoing. He told them that no one on Earth would believe them anyway. The mission itself was erased before it even launched. If they returned, their story would vanish. But the truth would remain. Ivan pleaded that they take her, that Earth needed to see, to prepare. Keller begged that they bury it, that Earth was not ready, that showing her would doom them. The alien woman's voice filled their heads again, softer now, almost pleading. Hunter. Near, the crew froze. The meaning was clear. The darkness that destroyed her people had felt her awakening. It was moving. It was searching. And soon it would arrive. Lewis felt the weight of 1,000 lives pressing on his shoulders. His crew looked to him, the alien woman's eyes fixed on him. Even the ship seemed to hold its breath, waiting for his choice. He gripped the small explosive, its weight heavy in his hand. His mind screamed with fear, his heart whispered with doubt, and his soul ached with the burden of command. In that moment, he thought of Earth, the blue planet spinning silently in the distance. His home, his family, his people, innocent, unknowing, vulnerable. Could he risk it all on faith in something alien? Or would he damn humanity by destroying their only warning? He lowered the explosive slowly, his chest heaving. He whispered that destroying the ship would change nothing. The darkness already knew. The beacon was lit the moment she awoke. Killing her would only leave Earth blind, without knowledge, without preparation. Keller shouted in rage, trying to grab the charge, but Lewis held him back. Ivan stood beside him, supporting his choice. The alien woman stepped closer, placing her hand over Lewis's glove, her touch sending a strange warmth through his arm. Her golden eyes flickered. Her voice whispered again, "Not enemy. Guide." The ship groaned once more, rising higher. Dust exploding across the lunar surface. Alarms blared in their helmets. Keller fell silent, his face pale with horror. Ivan began to weep softly. Lewis stared at the alien woman, and for the first time he understood the choice had already been made. Apollo 20 would not return the same way it had left. And Earth's fate was now bound to something it could not understand. Mission Control in Houston waited for Apollo 20's next transmission. They expected simple reports, fuel updates, oxygen readings, .com voices like every other mission, but instead they heard only static. Long waves of broken sound, and then silence. The official records would later show nothing unusual. They would say Apollo 20 was never launched. They would say the program ended with Apollo 17, but the few men listening that night knew something was wrong. Their screens flickered with strange signals. Their ears caught fragments of voices, terrified and distant, on the moon, inside the alien ship. Commander Lewis, Ivan, and Dr. Keller clung to the walls as the vessel shook violently outside. Lunar dust exploded into the air, the massive ship tearing itself free from its tomb. The ground split. Craters cracked wider, as if the moon itself resisted the awakening. The astronauts screamed into their radios, calling for Houston, begging for guidance, but no one could hear them. They were on the far side, cut off from Earth. Their words carried only into the void. The alien woman stood tall, her golden eyes blazing brighter than before. Her voice echoed in their skulls. "Coming," she whispered, the word filling them with dread. Dr. Keller tried to plant the explosive, charge his hands trembling, but the device slipped from his grip as the floor shook. Lewis caught him, forcing him back, saying it was too late. The ship had already chosen its course. Ivan pressed his hand against the wall, tears streaming inside his helmet. He whispered that they had to trust her, that this was destiny. Lewis did not answer, his eyes fixed on the rising dust outside. The alien vessel broke free, its massive structure lifting from the lunar surface with a soundless roar. The astronauts felt the vibration through their bones, the moon below shrinking as the ship carried them higher. Their mission was no longer a landing. It had become an abduction for a brief moment. Earth appeared in the distance, blue, beautiful, fragile. The astronauts stared in silence, each of them thinking of families, of lives they might never see again. The alien woman turned her gaze toward the planet too, her face unreadable, her eyes filled with ancient sorrow. Suddenly, the ship's interior shifted, walls folding, lights streaming. The astronauts were thrown into a chamber that looked more alive than mechanical. The floor pulsed like veins, carrying energy. The ceiling shimmered like a sky of liquid silver. The whispers returned. Louder this time, voices overlapping, countless voices. Dr. Keller screamed that they were not alone, that the ship was filled with the souls of her people. Lewis tried to calm him, but the voices drowned everything. One word repeated above all. Others, bound. The astronauts fell to their knees, their helmets shaking with static, their hearts pounding. Even pressed his forehead to the floor, whispering prayers. Keller clawed at his suit as if trying to escape. Lewis gritted his teeth, trying to hold on to reason, but even he felt it. The sense that their bodies no longer belonged to them. The alien woman stepped into the center of the chamber, raising her arms. The walls glowed brighter, and suddenly, through the ship's hull, the stars shifted, the moon fell behind. Space stretched unnaturally. They were no longer near Earth. They were being pulled somewhere else, back on Earth. A technician in Houston caught one last signal before the silence became permanent. It was short, broken, but filled with terror. A man's voice shouting, "Don't look for yous, don't follow." Then the line went dead. The controllers stared at each other in confusion and fear. Then the signal vanished forever. The record erased, the mission buried. Inside the alien ship, the astronauts clung to the last pieces of their humanity. Lewis tried to speak, his voice hoarse. He asked the alien woman why. Why bring them here? Why show them the darkness? Her golden eyes softened, and her broken voice whispered. Witness. The ship shuddered. Stars shifted again, and outside, something vast moved. A shadow darker than space itself, spreading across. The stars like a wave of endless night. The astronauts froze. Their breaths caught in their throats. They had seen it before in visions, but now it was real, alive, close. Dr. Keller sobbed uncontrollably, whispering that it was the end. Ivan whispered that it was the beginning. Lewis stared, silent, his heart breaking as he realized the truth. Apollo 20 had never been meant to return. Its mission was not discovery. It was sacrifice. The ship carried them further into darkness, further from Earth. Their voices lost forever. Their names erased. On Earth, the world slept peacefully, unaware that its first true contact with alien life had ended in silence. Unaware that 3 men had vanished beyond the moon, carrying with them a terrifying truth too heavy for humanity to bear, and in the stars, beyond the reach of radio and light. Apollo 20's crew disappeared, swallowed by an ancient ship and a fate not written by human hands. Years passed, and Apollo 20 was erased from the records. The official story never spoke its name. Historians said the Apollo program ended at 17. Newspapers moved on, and the world forgot. But in the deep halls of secret agencies, whispers of that mission never died. In hidden files, fragments of strange transmissions were kept, static, mixed with voices crying out, begging not to be followed. One line repeated often. Commander Lewis's voice breaking as he said, "We are not alone." Then silence. Some technicians swore they had seen strange readings after Apollo 20 vanished, signals that should not have existed, faint pulses coming from far beyond the moon. One described them as heartbeats. Another called them warnings, but their reports were buried, locked away, dismissed as errors. Decades later, those signals still appeared. Sometimes faint, sometimes strong, each time pointing to the same distant region of space, each time carrying a pattern, a rhythm, a voice lost in the static. Conspiracy groups began to spread stories. They claimed Apollo 20 found something on the far side of the moon, something not meant to be discovered. Some said the crew had been captured by aliens. Some said they had turned into aliens themselves. Others whispered they had become messengers for something far worse. In grainy, leaked photographs, a figure appeared, tall, pale, with glowing eyes, standing beside 3 humans, their faces blurred. Their bodies bent as if they no longer belonged entirely to Earth. The photos were dismissed as fakes, yet they fueled the fire. The alien woman's image haunted those who saw it. Her sorrowful eyes, her calm face, her presence that seemed both terrifying and protective. Some believed she was warning humanity. Others believed she was guiding them toward destruction. And then came the new signals. More recent, clearer, voices speaking in broken English. A man's voice whispering, "We see the hunter," followed by silence. Panic spread through the few who had access to these files. If true, it meant the darkness was real. It meant Apollo 20 had not been destroyed. It meant the crew still existed, bound to that alien ship. Wandering deeper into the stars, carrying the warning Earth was never ready to hear. Scientists who secretly studied the patterns said the signals carried coordinates. Places beyond Earth's reach, systems empty and dead, as if the ship was leaving markers. A trail for someone to follow. A trail that could lead humanity into danger. Some officials argued the truth should never be revealed. Earth was not ready. Fear would spread. Hope would die. Others whispered that the truth must be known. That only by facing it could humanity survive, but in the silence of the night skies, ordinary people sometimes swore they saw things. Lights moving strangely, shadows blocking stars. Objects far too large to be satellites, drifting across the black. One astronomer reported a ship the size of a mountain passing across the lens of his telescope. Dark, silent, and gone in seconds. He lost his job soon after, his records seized. His career erased. Still, the whispers never stopped. They said Apollo 20's crew had not died. They had changed. They had become something new. Half human, half bound. To the alien vessel, voices for the woman who once slept in the moon. Voices carrying a message humanity was too blind to hear. The terrifying truth remained. Humanity's first real step beyond Earth had not been triumph. It had been warning. Commander Lewis, Ivan, and Dr. Keller were no longer names on a list. They were myths. Legends whispered in hidden circles. Symbols of what happens when humans step too far, too fast, into the dark. And yet, among the whispers, one question echoed the loudest: had Apollo 20 vanished forever? Or were they coming back because the signals had changed? No longer just warnings, no longer just static. Now they carried a new word, repeated over and over. Growing clearer with every transmission, soon Earth remained silent. The governments remained quiet. The files remained hidden. But the fear grew. People looked up at the moon differently, wondering if something still watched from its far side. Something ancient, something bound, something waiting, and beyond the moon. In the endless dark, the alien ship drifted, carrying its passengers further away. Their voices lost, their humanity fading, their message burning louder with every heartbeat of the vessel. The truth was terrifying. Apollo 20 never returned, but their legacy was not silence. It was fear. Fear that one day, the darkness they had seen would arrive, and when it did, humanity would have no choice but to face it, alone or with the help of something they never understood.